I know it's not Amy Stark, or I mean, Cindy Stark.
Okay.
Yeah, no, thank you. All right, do we have any changes to the agenda?
I don't believe so.
Yes? Changes to the current agenda?
Yeah, but I mean, we're not changing any order.
Oh, okay, nope.
No, and nobody signed up to speak?
Nope.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
By Bobby
Second.
and Scott. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. There are no public comments and communications, so we will move on to 6.1, board committee reports. Operations?
I'll take the first part.
Okay.
The Park Avenue project update. We found out a week ago that there may be a year delay on it, which is the street in front of the school. The city of Glendon had a grant or had applied for a grant, and then the state had split it up, but now they can only get half of what they were looking at doing paid for through a grant. It's not done yet, but it could be 2019 instead of 2018. We'll just keep going like we're going and get it done. We've got an easement we need to approve in the future here on October 9th. And all that is so that we can allow them to work on the school property to finish the sidewalk. Nothing out of the ordinary.
Okay.
Then we talked about the transition of maintenance with Ken coming back and Rick with his last few days. Anyway, we kind of came up with some numbers, recommendation for Ken as it's written, and that doesn't include the benefit.
Does not?
Well, there is no benefit. Yeah, there is no
Okay.
benefit. So it's technically, I guess, we would say a saving
Okay.
a little bit. Food service ended up with another grant for a second chance breakfast cart. Basically, it was a $5,000 grant. Cost of it $72.57. She was able to get some extra monies to pick up the balance, so it is literally free to the district. There is no matching funds or anything like that. It is $0 for the startup. I'm assuming there's us after that.
Now, is that at both sites, or what's
It's
it?
for the high school,
Yeah. it's
because
the
we
high
got the
school.
middle school one already
Okay.
last
So
year
like
through a
middle
grant.
school is grab and go, so the high
Exactly,
school is
same
something
thing.
else?
Second chance breakfast.
Second chance, okay. Okay, nice. Okay.
I attended wellness this week, DGF Wellness Committee. Great program that also brought up the second chance breakfast that was addressed in the wellness committee, so that'll be a nice addition. As well as it's going to be International Walk to School Day on October 4th, and they're talking about just promoting the whole month of October as Walktober. One of the big things is we talked about the snack program, and initially last spring they had talked about each site having a table set up for back to school night with all the chaos of everybody trying to get back to school and teachers and staff. They're going to try it now in October during MEA when they come in for the conferences
Conferences, okay.
to see if we can grab some more of those people, because it's great. The snack program is fantastic, and it's 23 cents a day, very affordable. And it sounds like they made a few changes. Chelsea made a few changes to what was being offered, and the response so far has been good. So other than that, also like Scott mentioned, the grant, and that was about it. So, but great group of people. They're doing wonderful things for DGF as far as wellness. So
The other was the football scoreboard on our end.
Oh, yes.
Looks like we'll have that in October 6th. We did get some insurance money as a result from that. Fortunately, the sponsorships also covered that, so we might be able to take care of some of the other capital expenses associated with activities and whatnot that we normally would not have in the budget as a result.
The wrestling mats that were put on hold.
Are back on with
Back
the
on.
pre-existing funding, so, because that, we were gonna use that scoreboard. We needed the scoreboard But now we're able to now put that money back on the mats, and then we still have now, of course,
And they're looking at mid-October for the wrestling mat installation, so that'll all be done before we start the wrestling season.
So they've been ordered?
Oh, yeah, yep,
Okay.
it's
These are
back
the
on.
wall mats?
Yep,
Yep.
yep,
Okay.
yeah, it's all on track to be installed, probably EM break.
And then, Reedy Nook, Diller site, door 1, door 5. It's just kind of an update.
Yeah.
It's preliminary stages. They're gonna need to make some, naturally some adjustments in order to set it up, but that's about it.
Okay, so that's that little reading area that we were saying would be so cute?
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
so and now that Peg's back, she'll have the leadership team over here, sit down and go take a look at some other places and come up with recommendations, and
Oh, they're gonna make it so cute.
so it'll be good.
That is just gonna be
It really
darling.
will.
There
And
should be some electrical probably on both locations, but it's, pretty dark underneath there now.
Yeah, I mean, can you just see the competition there will be to decorate
in it.
that, Yeah, that's.
And we're gonna end up seeing, I think, we know we're gonna end up seeing at both of the sites, some of the requests probably for some of the tables with the charging stations and things like that. It's needed. Anybody who goes to events and you see the iPhones that are all along the walls where kids have left them all over the place, and it's like, are you kidding me? So, it'll be good.
All right.
And then the bike thing is kind of moving forward a little bit.
Oh, okay.
It's been kind of,
What has happened with that so far?
Well, right now, we got the training that's coming up. So they've got Tom Critchley, Tracy, Nikki, all have to go to a regional training. That'll be in October down at Brainerd for the coordination of it. So they'll be doing that in October, and otherwise, everything's moving forward with it. So,
Okay.
working on for implementing everything, as we go through the year.
All right.
I just want to give a shout out to the Glennon Fountain Parents Group. They had their fall festival
Yes.
yesterday, and it was so much fun. There was a lot of families there, great turnout, probably helped the weather being icky. Brought a lot of kids out there.
Yeah, Kendra
but
said there was a lot.
there was a lot of children there, a lot of kids. So, yeah, great time had by all, and hats off to them. They did a fantastic job as usual, so.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to 6.2, the fall open house report. Donna Oberg.
That's us. We've got a whole crew that's.
Oh, wonderful.
So, should we just stand?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Did you bring? This is a recap. I'll give you one and pass it around. Do I need to give directions, or do you guys have that down?
I think we're okay.
There's the assessment. That's from the Dilworth site, the recap that we did. Yeah, stand in front of me. So we, first off, just wanted to present back to you guys for giving us this opportunity to give this a try, those before school conferences on the first 2 days of regular school, where kindergarten had a chance to meet with families and have those kids come in one at a time with the families. It was just life-changing for the families. And we actually have a parent from Dilworth here that wants to speak to that. But I'm speaking from the Dilworth and Nicole from Glendon. As you can see from Dilworth, we had 96% of parents attend. And then as school started, we had 3 new families enroll. So those parents of those students, they set things up after the fact. So right there spoke volumes that parents valued this time also when that many chose to make that a priority. So we saw such positive things. There's notes from all the other teachers from our site on the Dilworth one. But just a few recaps from our site. We saw just welcome in such a nice, calm way. I mean, the families were able to meet their teacher. The kids were able to see the room. We took about 10 minutes to just let everybody kind of come together in the room. Then teachers did a little bit of an assessment, which I also shared with you, and we used the same assessment at both sites. So about a 10-minute assessment while parents went in the hall, filled out all the paperwork. Any questions that they had, we met again for the last couple minutes and just kind of hashed over any other questions they had. We got to talk buses. Our site PTA provides them a t-shirt and a book, so that was awesome. It just could not have been a more settled way for them to make that transition to kindergarten. So I'll let you share your
Yes.
little.
I agree as well. Our site, we only had 2 families not come, and they were students that were retained anyway and that felt comfortable with our school system. They didn't have any questions when we reached out to them after we had our conferences. We absolutely loved this way to get to know our students. Again, we had that time to just welcome them into the classroom, unload their backpacks, talk for a while, and then parents could go out and fill out paperwork. We had time with our students to do all the assessments, and I love that we had this same assessment. We're on the same page. Both sites are doing the same thing. All the assessments that we did would usually take us maybe a week or 2 or more to do, because with kindergarten you have to do it one-on-one, maybe do it during rest time, but having that 25 minutes to get all of that done, and I knew all the students. I knew where they were at when they came in, and they knew me. Speaking with Lori as well, we had no criers on the first day. I mean, they were just so happy, and they knew who we were. They felt comfortable, and I feel like having that time with parents, like I could actually sit with them and talk with them and ask and let them know, like, if I'm there for them, and give them information on our school. New parents who had new questions about transportation, anything, didn't feel rushed. It was just an at ease type of thing. No complaints from parents about having to take time off work or anything to do that. Lori just shared she had many first days with all her years with Glendon, but this one by far was the best. My parent that I reached out to couldn't be here, but she has an email. I'd like to read just a little bit of that. She said that her daughter had so much fun with an individual experience, meeting her teacher, seeing her room and her locker. It gave her time to think about things and evaluate her surroundings. She loved the meeting in the spring as well, and she got to meet and see what kids were coming to kindergarten with her. I thought the experience was great, having the individual time with the teacher. Even though it was my 3rd kid going to school, I could tell how much my daughter loved it. Overall, this is a great program to get to meet the teachers and get started off with school for the entire family. So I didn't hear any negatives. Overall, it was just so positive. And then plus with the benefit of opening a 3rd kindergarten in Glendon, we were able to know where those kids were. We knew them already. So we were actually at more of a benefit to split them up and have a good combination in that 3rd classroom. So I can't say enough about how well it went. I loved it. I felt like I knew my kiddos right away. I felt comfortable, and a lot of stress was relieved from our lives as teachers too on the first day.
Well, and I think our big objective was to make this transition for families the best we could. And I think that's truly what we did achieve. And one of the big things was if parents had, someone on an IEP, or they wanted to have that individual time to talk, they had it. Instead of at back to school night where you're backed up. And I have a parent from my room that was willing to come in, Laura Lundy. If you want to just share your little bit of.
Sure. So this was child number 3 for me, and I speak as a parent, but also as a family practice physician in the area, and this is by far one of the best programs I've seen. I have a lot of kindergartners I take care of, and I have some from Dilworth, and I've actually received some of I reached out to my moms and my parents, hey, how'd it go? And developmentally, this is just a no-brainer. These kids have anxiety, they're anxiety-ridden anyway, so to decrease that anxiety really adds to the experience. I think it also creates a space where they can have a special moment, because when we have older kids and we're trying to drop them off and make sure that they're kind of in the mode, and I had the middle school and the 4th graders, so I had special time, and then when you have multiple kids, you don't want to lose that special moment, so thank you for giving that to me back, because we lose a lot of those with subsequent children. But from a developmental standpoint, thank you for recognizing that these kids, this is a very, very anxiety-ridden moment, and you guys decrease that anxiety, and I hope you continue it. To not continue it, in my opinion, developmentally is detrimental to them. So this is just cool. This would be a deal breaker for me, as having a choice between 2 different school districts. It would be a deal breaker for me, having experienced it. So thank you for your support.
And to speak to it from a non-kindergarten perspective, Amy Ridman and I are here at the Dilworth site. So I parked myself out at the door for back to school night where kindergarten was not involved. So we had our 1st through 4th graders here in the building, and it was amazing the difference. First of all, 100 less family, children, plus parents, plus siblings in that hallway was huge. So the traffic was less, the anxiety was less, and then those parents could spend time with those 1st through 4th graders. It was amazing to me. I also need to give a shout out to Pay School, or School Pay, whichever we're on now. But I was, like I said, parked in that corner, and I looked down the hallway, and those of you who've been around for a while know this. There were 2 different times I looked at the lunch table ladies. They were sitting there having a conversation with nobody in line. And Jamie had to get to there's our secretary, had to get to a football game of her son's, and she had to be there at 7:15 or 6:15. I said, yeah, good luck. I think she walked out the door a little bit after 6 because assignment books were paid for. There was no line at the transportation table. I just couldn't believe how smoothly everything went. And I think alleviating or removing those 100 kids from that night made a huge difference. You wanna speak?
And so the residual fallout is why these ladies are here, of things we didn't really even, when we came and asked for this, of how it impacted everybody at our site.
So first day of school?
First day of
As
school.
non-classroom teachers, we help out that first week of school, and one of our jobs is to help out before school, and as Lori spoke to, those first few days of school, that many less bodies in the hallways was glorious. But once kindergarten started, since they were already used to school a little bit, that transition to school went so much smoother. We were able to bring them into the lunchroom and train them on the first day. So they got to get their little trays, walk through the lines, practice going to the table, practice what it would look like when the teachers came and picked them up, so they knew what to do. We usually run 45 minutes to an hour behind schedule the first week of school.
For lunch.
Because of kindergarten. Because of those 100 kindergartners. We ran 5 minutes behind on the first day of school. So we were pretty excited. The other snowball effect for us that we saw is that anxiety with those older kids. They have anxiety as well. And a lot of them are charged with going and picking up their little siblings on the first day of school. And that's anxiety for them. So they could come back to school, get used to it before they had to go and pick up their sibling on that 3rd day of school. So it's just overall really a positive experience for the entire school.
As a user of the transportation bus system too, the bus driver gave me the point that it was nice because the 2-day crazy had settled down just a little bit. And so when the kindergartner got on there, it wasn't as chaotic. Again, a really anxiety-driven moment. But
And a 2-day first week of school for those developmentally too is huge for those little kindergartners. So we also, on the Dilworth site, you'll see that there were some, where do we go from here? We want to kind of look at, hopefully we'll support it again, but how does this tie into World's Best Workforce and the Ready for K? What do we do about it? Where do we go with the data that we, gathered on these assessments? I know we're out of space, but how do we look at programming for kids that aren't ready for kindergarten, but is there a potential someday down the road for a step into kindergarten or something on that order for those kids? So we don't want to say, yay, we did it, now we're here, but what can we do to keep moving this forward and making it better? And questions or comments that you guys have for us, and anything that you maybe heard, or?
I wrote down a couple of things. One I always ask, workload for you all. Was it too much, and do you need more time? I asked that, Jen, because that's a lot of stuff you had to do in 2 days and a lot of planning. Was it enough time
I thought
for
it was.
yourselves?
Yeah. And from our side, everyone, the time we had with families was good. I'm flexible, my kids are all older now, so scheduling a little bit later at night wasn't a problem. But I think even the ones that had younger children were able to make those adjustments, because some families did need to meet, a little bit later or whatever. But I think everyone from our side, we were good.
Yeah, it was good. I think as far as the workload, we had time to prepare beforehand with all our assessments. We were doing the same thing. So as far as the workload, it was okay. It was just the repetition of meeting the parents and the children. And, we were out of there by about 5 o'clock and felt really comfortable and happy that we just knew everybody.
Well, and I know this was quite a while in the planning too.
Yeah.
And I'm just glad it worked out. I have young kids that age. I think it would have been great.
Mm-hmm.
I have a first grader now, but we got a couple more to send through. So, Thank you all.
Well, thanks for the
Thank you,
positive
guys.
feedback, but
Thank you.
kudos to you
Yes,
guys
thank
for
you.
implementing this, and
Because I know
you guys
you-
did all the work, so that's great, thank you.
Yes.
Well, you gave us the go-ahead. That's what
Yeah.
we needed.
I mean, as a mom of three, you know, when you have your fourth and fifth one, you're just, it's sink or swim, honey. Put it in, let's go. And so it really is.
It is.
They have no choice, they have to come with. And so, you know, for them to have that time is very, very valuable.
I'm sure glad I wasn't one of yours.
Well, I'm sorry, that is what it is. You may be 3 days old, but we're heading to hockey, whatever.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, moving on to 6.3, the superintendent report.
It's hard to follow that. Those are
Yes,
days.
that's so good.
Those
Now we're
are
gonna
good.
talk about numbers.
Not until we get the levy. Just a few things. Got, let's see. Audit will be ready for, the plan is the October 9th meeting. So we will have presentation on audit at that time. Got a handout for you. I'm not sure where this, whether we will
Oh, I
have this
read- I
in
read
place
that.
or not.
Yeah,
But one of the programs, you know, we're trying to,
I read that, that was.
we're trying to create more options for kids with the college career readiness component in particular. And looking at our co-curricular that are more extensions of the classrooms. Youth in Government is a program. In Minnesota, most of it is run by the Y. Again, that's just the overall, you know, authority with it. You do not have to be a community that has a Y to be involved in this. There are many, many different communities that do not have Ys that are involved. There's over 1,500 students that attend this. So if you get a chance, there's a great little 2-3 minute video on Youth in Government. What they do is they basically take over the Capitol, as you'll see when you look at some of those images. About 1,500 kids at one hotel down, I mean, they're down in the metro area, and they're presenting bills. They're going through all the structure on government, and it's just a really, really neat experience. So they have this a couple weeks before, about a week or 1 to 2 weeks before MSBA, that they're in the Twin Cities for this. This has been more of probably a metro and a eastern Minnesota, going up Duluth and such. There hasn't been as much on the western and northwestern part of Minnesota involvement, partly because there hasn't been an outreach program involved. There is now an outreach program. There's a coordinator. Met with all the superintendents in Lakes Country last week. I had met with him back in, I'd had conversations July, I believe, about the efforts that they have. So the point being, we had him come up, met with Lakes Country Soups. He's going to be meeting with the principals, secondary principals. He was at our high school site meeting with our social studies department. Paul has been involved with it before, coming in and speaking. The lobbyist for MSBA is involved with this. So the kids have all these different roles that they get exposure to. So we're looking at the possibility of starting this up into our middle school. That program that's in January is for 8th graders through 12th graders. And then there's a second program, which is the Model UN Conference. Again, in Minnesota, it's through the Y. And that one's in April typically. Winnipeg is a lot of the Northwestern Minnesota schools, some of that, and that's through the Rotary, have gone to the Model UN program in Winnipeg. That's a huge one, North American one that they have. But Minnesota hosts a large one in April. It's another one of these that is a potential great experience for kids. The cost on something like this is about $450 per student. So we're looking at the possibility of starting this smaller if we end up getting 10 to 15 kids, if we have the interest there and such. But then that covers their cost of hotel and all of that in the Twin Cities. So it's, when you compare what you potentially could have for programming to expand this for a total cost of under $10,000 and run some grant money and whether it be the Lions, some of the civic, this goes hand in hand with so many of the 4 Cs that are associated, the soft skills that we're talking about kids acquiring. So it's a program, I think, that is really going to take off in our region. And we have a possibility of being at the ground floor level of this, including getting some startup grant funds to get this moving. So I think we have some staff members that are excited about it. And so they're going to be doing some checking through the social studies departments to see what the interest is with kids. If there is interest, then what we would be doing is bringing this back to the board in October, because this would be something that we need to have the board authorize as another school-sponsored activity. So just heads up for now, but it's hard not to get excited about when you see some of the video clips of the things that the kids experience down there.
Right.
It's really, really cool stuff. So that's one of them. You have all the information from the operations meeting. You're going to get a lot on the levy tonight. We'll try to keep it moving back and forth, but so you don't have to hear just one voice with numbers tonight. Couple other things that we need to know so that we can get people registered. Are there people that want to go to phase 3, phase 4 training? Again, that's in St. Cloud. It's October 13th and 14th. So that one,
Friday, Saturday, correct?
that's a Friday, Saturday, I believe. Yes, that's a Friday, Saturday one. That's not that Sunday, Monday one like the other piece was. So that's something we really should take care of yet this week. If you're interested, email me so I can get hotels, get all that stuff aligned for people. Are there people that, it's a weekend before EM break. Anybody want to follow up with me or thinking about the possibility of it? Because it's the same place, I'm sure, at St. Cloud where the phase 1 and 2 was.
Division, right? It's right on
Yes,
4th and Division.
yep. So, anybody interested?
I would love to go. It's just
Time of the year, too.
Time of the year, and we have confirmation commitments
Okay.
that weekend
And
being confirmed. So, do they offer it in the spring? Is this something they offer twice a year, or is it always in the fall?
I'll check tomorrow. I'll call them back.
13th and 14th.
I think so. Because I think we checked into it before and it was always, we
I
were
think it's
always
usually
running into
just in
that.
the fall.
Yeah.
But I think this was one of them that they were contemplating running as an early bird again,
Or they
the
might have-
leadership conference.
And they might extend it because they said that this year is the record number of new board members in the
Right.
state.
Yeah.
So they might.
No, I think it'd be awesome for us to attend. I just can't make the commitment that weekend, unfortunately.
That's over
No,
So we-
It's the
before.
weekend
and
before.
Yeah, 'cause
Weekend
we have
before.
yeah.
But I'll check with them to find out if they think they're gonna run a second session and when it would be, and then I'll just email that to everybody so that everybody's
Thank
aware.
Thank you.
I've already attended.
And MSBA Leadership Conference, of course, you've probably seen those dates. That's January 11th and 12th this year. So it seems like it's a little bit earlier, maybe.
Same weekend, I think.
Is it?
It was
is
last year, yeah.
It just, though, I think it's just about as early as the dates that because it's always the second week, the full week, but anyway, the other thing is tomorrow, reminder, we've got Commissioner Bowerly that will be here. We'll be hosting a meeting on the tax credit. So that'll be a forum. The plan is that Representative Eakin, or Lean Marquardt, and Senator Eakin will all be here, and Commissioner Bowerly will be here, so there'll be a panel discussion unveiling that.
It's at the High School Media Center.
It's at the Media Center, same as last year, same type of a setup. There will be, so I'll do a quick intro, and then they'll do a recap for about 10 minutes, and then they're going to talk about the bond agriculture credit for about 15, and then how the credit works as far as on the ag land, and then they're also going to hit the child and dependent care tax credit. So there's a few topics. They just sent me this at 4 o'clock today, so, which is very typical that you get the agenda last minute. And then the other thing, again, we're in good shape right now, but we should start thinking about in October when we can find a day to work on the next policies. We know that we have the one in the 600s that had to be updated, that was sent back to the high school leadership, because that's the one that it affects the most. So they've got to give us some recommendations back, and we need to get that from them, and it's no point in meeting until we get that back, because that's an important one to get back from them.
We
So,
want to tentatively look on the 16th of October, the middle of October,
that's the Monday, right?
the Monday night. There's conferences that night, but I don't know if you're involved or you need to be in the
No.
building for that.
Well, other than just,
Yeah.
does that work for
What,
you guys, 16th of October?
October 16th.
So what time would you,
I have conferences for Autumn at 4:30 and I'd be available by 5.
do we have a
time?
game?
No game.
you want to do like 5:30? Does that work for you?
5:30.
Go 5:30 to 7 would be the latest that we'd have
Okay.
to, okay, 5:30 to 7, October 16th.
What location?
And,
You're out at Glendon for
Yep.
conferences? Then we'll
Let's
just
do
do it
it
in
then.
Glendon.
Okay. Media Center.
yep,
Thank you.
that'll work. Okay. That's all I've got for now.
Okay.
Certified? Do we want to schedule that in October too? After the audit negotiations?
Yeah. Do you,
We don't have anything scheduled yet, but we need to.
We need to, if we're having the audit on the 9th. I'm sure staff would appreciate that at some point.
you want to start looking at your calendars and come back with a date then on the 9th, once you get the audit done, or do you want to get it locked in?
My turnaround time's pretty easy. So I mean, I would say as soon as we can after the 9th.
Do you want to look at that week? Do you want to do like Tuesday night, the 10th, the 12th, the Thursday night?
I mean, we can,
'Cause I'm sure,
we'd have to ask what would work for them too.
yeah.
I'm available the 10th and the 12th in the evening.
Has there been language gone over yet? Have they sent forth any language or anything?
No, that all comes at your meeting.
Could we put out tentative the 10th and 12th, and we'll send an email out and see what would work for them?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that would be fine with me, both of those.
Yeah, probably not the 11th. DLT's the 11th.
Okay. So like, would you say like 6:37 or whatever they're available, or what do you typically
Right.
do, just so I have an idea? What is,
5:30 or 6, whatever
Okay.
works for them.
okay, sounds good.
You gonna,
Yep.
okay.
Good deal.
All right. That's good. Thank you, Scott, for remembering that. All right, moving on to 7.1, the approval of the September 11th meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Amy, is there a second?
Second.
By Lindsay. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. Moving on to 8.1, under business, under the consent agenda.
Total bills to be approved at this board meeting, $132,243.32.
We have our treasurer's report. Minnesota liquid asset. Yeah, activity accounts. And we have a donation from Sanford in $5,000 for the athletic scoreboard complex. Received a donation from the 40th class reunion of 1977 from the Glendon Felton class, the amount of $1,200 for STEAM and food service. We have a resignation of Tom Merrick, sorry, thank you, maintenance, effective September 19th. Resignation from Rick Koval, maintenance, September 29th. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Go ahead, Riley.
So moved.
By Raleigh, is there a second? Scott?
Yep.
Any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. And opposed, same sign. Moving on to 9.1, approving the non-certified contract for Joanne Lamrick, paraprofessional, $15.03 an hour, effective October 2nd.
So moved.
Motion by Amy. Is there a second?
Second.
By Lindsay. Any discussion? What site is she for?
Not sure.
Oh, okay. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed. Moving on to 9.2, looking for a motion to approve a contracted services agreement with Ken Hovde for maintenance department supervision for $30 an hour with a maximum of 40 hours a week for the 17-18 fiscal school year to continue until building maintenance supervision has been filled with school district personnel. Just a reminder on that one, that is a $30 no benefit, as Scott had mentioned in his report. So looking for a motion for that.
So moved.
By Lindsay. Is there a second?
Second.
Go ahead, Kelly.
By Raleigh. Okay.
Didn't hear you, sorry.
Okay. Any discussion? Glad to have him back. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. Moving on to 9.3, updated fee schedule. What was that you were pointing out on that, Brian?
Yeah, when you look at it, the only thing, there was it should have been $17 an hour. What Jeannie has to do is, because of the Affordable Care Act and such, she has to take that dollar amount, that's a daily, and divide it up into their working hours. So to make that an approximation, it should have been 17 instead of 20. You take that dollar amount of 115. So it's just updating it, getting the corrected amount. So on the far right, you can see it where it's in a little bit darker color. It shows the $17 an hour. That's the change.
Yep. Okay, so looking for a motion with that change.
So moved.
By Amy, is there a second? Second. By Bobby. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Moving on to 9.4, the bond referendum. And I am making a motion to table this motion until we get better verbiage on that.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Can we just fix the verbiage now? If the verbiage is the issue, why don't we just fix the verbiage? I was thinking about that after I talked to you. Like, if people aren't comfortable with the verbiage, why don't we just edit it? We do it all the other times. Is that okay, or is that?
I want to see it in writing before I approve it.
Yeah, I think we need to have a deeper discussion on the steps and where the board approves the steps as we go all the way along.
Yeah, when I was thinking about it after talking to Sandy, I actually wrote this right here. Administrative and staff to complete necessary actions under board supervision in order to bring a forth bond referendum. That would be, I think that was the part that Sandy had mentioned.
That's not what we even talked about last Monday, though.
What,
When we all left that meeting, that was not the verbiage that we talked about. It was to approve administration to gather a committee together to start the process for pending board approval. So that's not even what all five of us got up and walked out of that room. That's what we agreed on.
so how can we write it down? to
Well, I'm
start that?
going to throw two more things that are pretty critical, because the first time I heard about this being an issue was today.
No,
And
it's not. Sandy called you on Wednesday and said it had to be changed.
And we did,
Yeah.
and we did.
Couldn't, to not even close to what we discussed on Monday.
There's 2 forms in the email. I can pull up the last one.
So,
But it's still,
so anyway, I called Greg from MSBA. I said, I'm missing something since I know that Terry Quist, I didn't put together the verbiage. So I'm not sure where some of this stuff is coming from, but anyway. So Terry does consulting work with MSBA. So I asked him, would you give us verbiage for the next step? Which is what we received. So I called MSBA back today and I said, what is the next step for verbiage? And Greg said, and you can call Greg said, the next step is to have the board authorized to direct the administration. There's 2 things that you need as a school board. You need the review and comment and the timeline. So that's what you're directing. Now, we can have, again, and what we can't do, that's why I'm trying to, what specifically do you want for the language? Because your next step as a school board is to get the information for timeline for review and comment. If you want 2 different timelines, one for August, one for the November date, that's fine, but you're directing the administration to get you those timelines. That's all you're doing. That includes your whole communications plan. Because then you make decisions on what you have, who you have involved with all that. This is not, you're not giving authority to any individual. You're the only ones who make the contracts. So I'm not sure but we got to get through some of this stuff sooner or later. Because I'd like to know what things you're missing that you feel like you need, because I haven't had one phone call other than from the board chair on this. That's why it's frustrating to me. So you tell me the verbiage you want. We can't do it through an email exchange, constantly updating. What is it that I'm going to get you from now to 2 weeks from now that's going to be different if this verbiage was created in consultation with them in the first place? Tell me specifically what you would like me to have added in there. I will put something together. I will get it to MSBA. I will have MSBA get it back to us so that you have something ready in 2 weeks. Because when I asked Greg, he said if they've had the task force present, their next step is to make a decision, are they moving to the next step, which is they need to know review and comment and the timeline process. They need you as administration to get them that information. So
Is there another?
you guys just tell me what you want.
Well, I thought when we left Monday night, that we were in agreement that we were directing the administration to, bring together a group of people and to set up a timeline. And that's what we said. So I don't know why the verbiage is coming from Terry Quist when you were in the room with us, and you could have wrote the verbiage of what we said and we approved that night.
So make up your verbiage tonight then.
Like, what do we want to have the verbiage? Like, is there another vote, Brian, that would happen for us to move forward after this vote on a plan? Would we have to vote as a board on a plan after this?
You can't, there's nothing that can be done with a bond until you get to the point that you approve your date, you approve by resolution that you're going to actually do a ballot question. You're like 8 months away from any of this stuff yet.
So
You're not approving a bond tonight. You're approving it to move forward, directing administration to get you those timelines. If you go back to any of our referendums we've done before, it's a timeline now so you're making an official move to show the public that you're making that next step.
can I ask for the people that are struggling, because I didn't like the initial one because it seemed like it was predetermined what we were doing, and I wanted it to be more open. I didn't like the first verbiage where it was specific, and I talked to Sandy about that, right? Where it was very specific. And she had a conversation, and we agreed, because she's the chair, I'm not gonna call you anyway, because
Yeah.
that's who I want to talk to. And she called and talked about it, and I agreed that first one wasn't right. I think under board supervision is what I thought about after her, but I meant to visit with you before the meeting to ask. But my part would be, one, is there another vote? Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, are people concerned right now that if we vote yes to this, it's going to the voters? Yes.
No, not at all.
Oh,
Not at all.
I just
No.
wanted to make
No,
sure, because
not
if
at
that
all.
was the case, that would be concerning, because.
To me, it's the makeup of who's gonna be on the advisory.
Advisory for what? Which advisory?
step, the committee
Well,
we talked
but-
about
But
last
remember,
Monday
you've got
night.
multiple committees. That's the thing.
Let's,
That's what we would be
Yes.
bringing
Let's
forward
see who's
to
gonna
the
be on.
board, including the timeline of when these different ones. That's
But that's what we're voting for, is
That's
to
what-
create the committees.
exactly.
And I know,
That's
like, I
exactly.
know when the task force was created, we did see who was going to be on the task
yep,
force.
and that's what I wanna see, but
Right.
do you see anywhere in this thing that it says to form the committees? Does the
Oh,
new
No,
one
but that
say
is,
anything about
that is
forming
the
committees?
administration moving forward.
That's the
to-
administrative.
Administration moving forward, anything about the committees in that?
Well, the previous one, if you remember, the previous one, the first one you didn't like, and I can tell you that the reason that they normally put that information in is because of transparency. One thing that people talk about is not knowing what the bond's gonna be about. So that verbiage that said the bond would, is the description of the bond. It's description of the process, and you notice that that description listed the fact, including the involvement, committees, and all that. So it was not giving the authority to select who's gonna be on the committees. It's the idea of getting the committees established in the process. And then you fill in, once you get the standing committees, think about what we went through before when we put together the task force. We said how many people we'd want to have. We didn't say the names.
Right.
We said how many, so we brought to the board, here's the committee makeup. Does it make sense? About 20. Here's the amount of people we'd have from this community and this stakeholder and all that. That was brought to you, and then once we decided that, once the board took action on that, then we opened it up to get people in those roles.
The part I left with the meeting is, until we were willing to vote, I didn't want the staff to basically make a wish list, and then all of a sudden the board says no. That's a waste of their time. They could be doing many other wonderful things other than making a wish list and going to meetings for a referendum that we have no, either we will move forward with or we won't. But if we can't even say yes to starting the process, then I don't want to waste the staff's time. They probably have other things to do than make a wish list, you know, along with every other initiative that gets stacked on their plate. I really don't want to jam a lot more stuff and have them do it. So if we can't even start this, which we have many times that we can cancel this in the future, but if we can't even start here, why would we ever start a committee and waste everybody's time? Heck,
I guess I'd just like to see it stated in this one.
specific.
Each step, the committees, followed by this, not necessarily a complete timeline, but forming the committees, doing this, getting it to a certain point. All worded out, not just, well, it was on this a while ago, or it was on that a while ago, up to date,
So,
as it's gonna happen.
so what would you like, Rowley?
Like specifically.
Tell me, because I don't know what you guys want. I seriously don't.
Last Monday, we had the meeting and we agreed to start the process to form the committees.
So make a motion. Make a motion what you specifically want.
That's,
Isn't that what you heard, Sandy?
It was to give the authority to the administration to select committee members.
Yes.
That would serve
Exactly.
on.
that's all we talked about.
So when we left that meeting, you said, this is what the agenda's gonna read as, and then on Wednesday, when we got the agenda, this is how it read differently.
So,
We all got up from the table, we're like, sounds good, we were all in agreement.
so
I'm just
Make a
saying, you
motion,
said
so-
one thing and then another thing happens. So it's kind of like, you know, we spent 2 hours together. We all sat around and discussed. We walked away cohesive. We had good conversation. And then Wednesday comes around and there's a different thing. Sandy said she's going to contact you, and she said that's not the verbiage we discussed on Monday night.
Yep.
And
And we updated that, correct?
Right.
Okay, so.
We
not
updated,
exactly, but
Right.
yes, okay.
Well,
It's-
we updated based on what I was
What-
told
what
by the board
verbiage-
chair.
What,
Alright.
what verbiage would you suggest?
in
After
the
talking
in
to
the first,
multiple one of us.
right, in the first reading that came out, I just wanted the verbiage
Can we pull this
changed.
up on the computer?
The first one?
I have it right here.
The first one?
I have it right here. Do you want me to read it out loud
Smart
what the
board.
first
Sure.
one was? A motion was made by blank, seconded by, and duly carried to direct the administration and staff to complete all necessary actions in order to bring a bond referendum to the voters on Tuesday, November 6th of 2018. The bond referendum would address facility needs at both Glidden and Dilworth sites. These actions would include, but are not limited, meeting all legal requirements for holding a bond referendum, hiring professional services, a plan for sharing facility needs with voters, and involving staff and community and facility design solutions.
Right. The only verbiage change that I see needed to happen was there where it was saying under board authority, that it would be going forward too.
And I thought, and that's what I wrote, like under, even on this one, actions under board supervision. But under board authority, I scratched my head here as we're talking, and so by voting yes, we're giving board authority, correct?
It's just
So
saying that
it'd
the
be-
board is still responsible for any next step that's going to be happening. This is what we want administration to do right now, is to create this task force. Under, bringing it back to us, we approving the next step that we need to have. And I'm just not saying, to me, the first verbiage we read looked like we were giving them the authority to continue, and to do more than what we were agreeing to on Monday night. So that's why I wanted just the verbiage added where it says under board authority, that we are in
So back
control
to
of the next
first and
steps.
right, under board authority.
Yes,
See, like that, I could see that, the part that I liked about, the first one looks specific, but at the same time, you know, part of that would at least tell people, so if they read this, whoa,
Yes.
what is it about?
right.
And then people might,
That's why I liked that first one, but I thought it needed to be under board authority
Yeah.
in that.
And that's why when you look at the statutory requirements, when it lists that in that verbiage, that's part of the statutory requirements. The board is the only one who has that authority. That's why that verbiage was created. Again, it's not my verbiage.
Right,
So
Right.
I don't really care I just need to get
right, but I can see.
some verbiage on there so
Right.
we can move
But I can see
forward.
why the concern when the language came out, because when you read one of the lines there, it looked like we were giving the authority to the administration, and that's why I was saying the verbiage needed to be changed. All the other verbiage looked good, but under board authority was the only thing that I felt needed to be added to that, because then it was very clear and people knew what we were talking about. We know it's under our authority, but I liked the fact that it would be in the minutes, clarifying
and the
that.
end result, just so everybody's around the table, the end result would be the same for probably both of them. I mean,
Yes.
we're have the authority, but it's still, how it's happening should probably be
In writing.
similar.
Right.
Correct.
So I wasn't at the meeting on Monday, so I wasn't part of the conversation. So if we just add that simple line under board authority, under the original, what came on the original agenda, would that clarify things?
That's what I would like to move forward next.
Yeah, the end result's the same.
Yep.
So we want to do that this time or next time?
I would just say do it this time, so at least we can tell our staff and we can start that process.
I think we should probably actually run it with and where they want to put, where MSBA would recommend putting the under board authority in that. At the beginning, at the end, where?
What's the concern? Just out of curiosity, I have to know that, because we can, at any time, as a board, if we don't like the outcome, we have to approve going forward a couple times anyway, so it may not, we have to approve other things. So if we don't like the way something's happening, I mean, this isn't like gonna go to the voters necessarily, but it's at least instilling trust in the staff and the individuals when we create this group. We can kick the can down the road, you know, forever, but
I'm not trying to delay this by any means, but I'm just trying to go by what our conversation was last Monday and being honest.
Yep.
And that is really, truly, it was like a complete 180. So
So I'm saying
I don't
in-
like the dishonesty.
I'm saying in the first,
Irritating.
in the
well,
first,
Wasting my time.
Okay, but wait a minute.
Okay, so.
What's the
other-
dishonesty?
other
I-
ti- other time-
I-
no,
I've
no,
gotta
no.
ask this
From the
question.
table, and you literally said, this is what the agenda item is gonna read like. And I was like, we're good. Remember? We're good. We're comfortable with that. That's the way it should read. And then we got something completely different by somebody who was not even at the meeting. We were all in agreement. That's what I'm saying. I said no surprises.
And when I left, I asked Sandy, I said, I will check on verbiage.
right.
Okay, so I take exception to the dishonesty part when I check with the board chair and I say what I'm going to do for the next step with the board chair, and all of a sudden there's a question of dishonesty.
Well, then somebody's not telling the truth, and it's,
And I had said it just needs to be what we had stated on Monday night. And so, and as you recall, there was some craziness stuff going on during the conversations on that night. And so, again, I just think we just need to have the verbiage in there that it says under board authority. And because then it's very clear what we're looking at doing and why, and what the bond would be for. And so nothing is being hidden, so.
So do you prefer the verbiage from the first?
The first one,
I read?
adding under board authority, yes.
I think the frustrating part for me is we've had 2 work sessions where we've come out and I felt good, like we discussed something and we had a plan, and then administration has fallen down on both of those.
Well, I'm
That's
not,
very
I'm
frustrating.
gonna have to back up and support Brian and Mr. Tygeson on this. Because he is doing what conversations that him and I are having on that. So, I'm going through with what he has emailed me or texted me, and I said, yes, I want it clarified and I want it under board authority. Then, he had said, how about this? It looks good. And I will say that I did not scroll down to what he was saying as far as the red line thing. I said, I just want it to be what we had stated on Monday night. So he was doing what I was requesting him to do by changing the verbiage. And because I said the last part looked like we were giving authority to administration to move forward with other things other than a task force. And that we didn't want to happen. And so I said, we'll strike that part, but add under administration. So again, I'm saying, I'm going to take some responsibility here because there was lack of communication that night when Brian and I were talking. He was involved in other things going on in our district at that time. And I just wanted it very clear that it was under board authority. And so we need to move it forward that way. So that's why, I know that I've been contacted from all of you, except from Bobby, with concerns on the motion. And that's why I want to make sure that it's a motion that was very clear, that's something that we all agreed on. And that's why I had made a motion right now to table that. I am fine taking that motion off the table if we can all agree on adding the verbiage under board authority to the first one.
And in the future, I will say this, it is very often, I've heard current members on the board refer to asking Greg at MSBA, and what does MSBA say, and what does MSBA say, and then Bride checks with MSBA, and now you shouldn't have checked with MSBA, and then the next meeting it'll say,
didn't
well,
say
let's
that.
check with MSBA, then let's check with Greg. So at some point.
Where are you getting that from?
The request that, remember, before the last meeting, we should visit, what does MSBA say in terms of before the last meeting?
Right, so that's what Mr.
Before the work
Tygeson did,
session,
was
remember
get
the
it
Greg
from
part?
that.
Yeah, so we're always referring to, well, what does MSBA say, and now MSBA,
I'm not doing a double
Suggested.
standard at all, Scott. I've never once said that he shouldn't contact MSBA. All I'm saying is that as a board, we agreed on what should be on the agenda. And then when you turn around and it's not what it is, what we talked about, that's what I'm talking about. I didn't say he shouldn't contact MSBA.
And Mr. Tygeson contacted MSBA or Terry for the verbiage for that, and he was doing what we thought we wanted. So when it came out to us and we all looked at that, and it looked like we were giving the authority elsewhere, that's where we were like, no, that's not what we agreed on. We wanted to make sure that we're not giving the authority other than the board is having the authority. So we can table it, or we can pass it with what the verbiage that you have, Lindsay, and add under board authority. I'm comfortable either way.
And you didn't like the first verbiage you said?
No, I'm fine with it because
You're fine with
I
it?
understand the process
The-
that'll happen down the road. So
Okay.
I'm completely fine with it.
Do you,
Because I realize that there's checks and balances later on down the road.
Okay, so I have made a motion and Scott has seconded. Lindsay, will you read that motion? Will you
Okay.
read that first
a
one?
motion was made by Scott, seconded by Sandy, sorry, and duly carried to direct the administration and staff to complete all necessary actions in order to bring a bond referendum to the voters on Tuesday, November 6th of 2018. The bond referendum would address facility needs at both the Glendon and Dilworth school sites. These actions would include, but are not limited to, meeting all legal requirements for holding a bond referendum, hiring professional services, a plan for sharing facility needs with voters, and involving staff and community in facility design solutions under all of this under board authority. Right? Is that how you would like to say it at the end?
Yes, yes. So with that being said, do we have any further discussion on that? Because that is clarifying everything that we had talked about last Monday night. Any comments on that, Molly?
I'm good.
You're good? You're good, Bobby? Okay, so there is a motion by Scott, seconded by myself. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. All right.
Amy, would you like this to write it, or are you just gonna pull
I
it up?
have it.
You have it?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, we will move on to
Levy.
Is that where we are? That was,
We are
I
at
think I
11.
tucked something. Okay, 9.5, the bond, primary tax levy,
Okay, and for the levy.
preliminary, sorry.
I've asked Jenna is working on an internship, a practicum or for class. Jenna, would you help? Let's see. So there's a few different items. I'm gonna give them this one first.
Okay.
And so if you wanna start with the pages as far as, you tell me what you wanna, and then I'm gonna jump in. You're gonna get 4 different, did I give you the next one? You're gonna get 4 different sets of documents, okay? You're not gonna need markers tonight because I created a cheat sheet for you.
What? Cheat sheet?
You're getting a cheat sheet. We're gonna make it even easier, and it's going to take some time off this total task, which I think you will like. And then here is the next set.
Okay.
There's the next. And here's the last set. And Jenna, do you want to talk about page 1 and go for it?
All right. Well, first I want to say thank you to the school board for letting me come here under Brian's supervision. It's been an honor to work on my practicum. We'll be wrapping that up end of November, early December. This is one portion of my practicum piece where we're looking at the more fiscal and financial side of that in the position of superintendent. One of those things that we've been working on is my understanding of the levy and the levy sheets, which is super fun reading with 31 plus pages. Yay! So when looking at this, the page that really jumps out to me is page number 1. Brian's going to go into more detail. He's given you these beautiful cheat sheets, Maybe you don't think it's beautiful, but when you like numbers and you want to keep everything right in front of you, I highly recommend looking at these. But let's talk about page 1. So you'll see numbers and data presented in 3 columns. The first column, it represents state. The second column is more the county. And the third column is district, and that's more of Superintendent Tygeson's estimates. So the way I like to talk about it, and the way that Brian and I have discussed, him as my mentor, is to kind of just work our way through each column. State being kind of thinking of this as history. So when you're looking at the state in that first column, you're looking at state aid, or that basic aid and how it's progressed over time. The nice thing about these sheets and the sheets that Brian presented to you as the cheat sheets is that it's really going to show a lot of that trend data, and I think trend data is really important. Knowing where you came from, how you came from that spot, and how you grow as a district, and where you're going down the road. Because we know that part of his position, when we talk about those adjusted pupil units, that line 57 in the third column, is really looking at how it's going to affect the future fiscal 19 and so forth for the next couple of years. And this obviously is going to also correlate to any referendum that we may or may not pursue. So let's go back to number 1. So it's kind of nice to see the progressions over time. You're going to see that with the 2007 to 2008, all the way down to 2018, 2019, and then again the pupil units piece. What I like about the pupil units piece at the bottom is how the fiscal 2008 to 2014 shows how pupil units used to be calculated in history, and now where they're currently at following fiscal 2015 and later. The idea in that first column in 2008 to 2014 was to keep all the ratios lower, but then as you can see, calculating all those differences kind of became a madness, right? We've got all sorts of different numbers, so they really wanted to find something that was a little bit easier to compute. And that's really where we end up with pupil units for 2015 and later. This portion of the state, or the history piece, as I'm going to continue to refer to it, also shows how we get funding for, say, grade levels like kindergarten. Nice piece of data there. Brian, jump in if I miss anything, okay? I'm going to keep going. County in the middle. This is, when I think of county, I'm looking at a means of distribution for both what we have in the state aid, which we've already covered, and also what we're looking at for levy, right, based off of the county reports. So this is where it gets really interesting, or maybe not interesting, depending on what fascinates you. If you like numbers, it's your game, right? Okay, so we're looking at market value. Market value and line 5, 2016. So when I look through all these things, I like to look at the 2016 piece, although referring back and comparing and contrasting between previous years is always helpful. So let's talk about that market value piece. Basically, we know market value is all property in district, so it's literally everything, right? So there's our number at 1 million, a little bit less than the previous year. So it's everything that we owe for in-district property. Then we look at the referendum market value, and that's looking at line 10. So basically, what I saw here is I kind of asked myself, what's not being taxed? And that was a big question and discussion that Brian and I had this morning and in previous weeks, because what's not being taxed is the ag and seasonal properties. And you're going to see that reflected when we go on in that class rates used in computing net tax capacity, because we're going to move on to that in the next portion, where you see how different types of homesteads or homesteads with certain numbers of acreages have different tax rates. Important piece to factor in. And especially, once again, tying it back in when we're looking at if we do or do not pursue referendum down the road. Okay, net tax capacity. I immediately jumped out to me, and this is where Superintendent Tygeson puts me on a quiz mode. He's like, what jumps out at you, Ledbetter? Okay, Brian. Well, we have a pretty significant difference between 2015 and 2016 in our net tax capacity, and why is that? And this is where I learned a lot working with Brian. It's due to the lower value on the ag land. And Brian, I might have you jump in on this, because I'm still kind of grappling with the whole ag credit and how that the ag land lower reduction rates on their property because of the inflation that we saw. So that might be a piece where I might have you jump in and educate with, but I'll keep going.
And right now, the credit doesn't affect any of this stuff yet.
Okay.
Okay, this is just the fact that, you know, the next part goes, the comparison on that 21 through 25 and 26 through 30 really shows, you know, that sales ratio is critical on 20, because this was the first time, you'll notice, that the counties are supposed to keep it to 90%. Okay, so when you look at those sales ratios, what you're looking for is to try to make sure that they can keep the sales, the value, the assessed value within 90% of the current sales. So in other words, you can't have a county assessor who's got a good buddy that has some land and that gets assessed at 3,000, somebody else gets assessed at 6. Okay, because then it's not staying within 90% of the current sales. So that's where they have to do these adjustments. And that line 20 is interesting because for the first time, that's where we're starting to see that issue of where all of a sudden the values on the ag land, people are actually paying more than the value. And so we're starting to see that drop in the values a little bit.
Are you
So that's
saying line 20?
line 20, that 102%?
Yeah.
That's where that first started kicking in. Remember, they got to keep it to 90. But of course, nobody wants to be paying more than what the value. Okay, so, you know, you run into those issues when you start hitting those 100%. So they have to keep it within a range of at least 90. And if they don't, then you start seeing some things done at the state level comparing the unadjusted to the adjusted. And so we don't have many of those occurrences right now. And that's why when you look at, compare line 21 to line 26, 22 to 27, 23 to 28 is the first time you see a little bit of a change. In fact, it's the only one. But again, when did that happen? It would happen right after there was an 89.9% ratio. So then they had to make an adjustment. So those things go hand in hand. They have to make sure that if one part of the market is changing a lot, they've got to make an adjustment. That's why when you look at the net tax capacity, line 15, the net tax capacity overall went down. But the market value, the referendum market value went up. Well, how could the net tax capacity decrease? The only way it could decrease, and the market value decrease, if the ag land was dropping. That's why you see on line 5 that we have actually less market value in 2016 than 15 because of the ag land drop. Because the RMV went up. And the only difference between market value and RMV is that RMV doesn't include that ag land in seasonal. Okay? So that's those adjustments. Now it's back to you.
Back to me. Okay. All right, so then we were looking at the adjusted NTC, or unlimited adjusted, and we want to see those lines the same. So it's a positive that we're seeing that the same in 2016 on line 25, and again on line 30. Moving on to the ag modified ANTC for the long-term facilities maintenance plan. This is where I believe going to Paul Morcourt's presentation with Lean tomorrow would be really beneficial. I hope to see you guys there. I'll be there on my birthday. Yeah. But I think that this ag credit, it can be relatively confusing. It's the concept itself, to be able to understand how it will positively influence any future referendum plans that we may or may not pursue. So maybe Brian, I'll have you jump in on that for talking about the ag credit piece.
And again, this isn't the credit.
Well, how that the
modified is more looking at, okay, the rates statewide. So again, we're not in the credit yet. Credit will come later, but it's modified based on statewide rates. So that actually goes into a factor on the equalization that you'll see at some points. So the credit will come in when we get into debt service.
All right, and then we look at the district column, the third column, if you will. And this is where Superintendent Tygeson's estimates come into play. And these estimates are done by him and his team, which I can't imagine just how many times you have to submit. And knowing that these were printed off, I think you've given me like 6 copies in a matter of 3 or 4 days. It just keeps changing. So we work with it. I think the important piece to know with the pupil data, especially in reference to that line 57, which we're going to see that adjusted pupil unit used throughout the levy sheets, is that the resident counts are based on all public school students living in the district, regardless of whether they attend there or not. So it has it's not impacted by, correct, on the open enrollment piece.
Say that again, which,
So
the
on
resident or the adjusted?
I was talking about
57.
on the resident, but on the adjusted as well. It's not, they're not impacted by the, correct me if I'm wrong here, because I'm
Okay,
learning.
so resident is the actual people that live in our district.
Okay, and the
So-
adjusted is
And then the
everybody.
adjusted is all the ones we serve.
Okay.
So the 36 through 46 are all based on the kids that live in the district, the families that live in the district. 47 through 57, 47 through 52 are the actual number of students. 53 through 57 applies the formulas on the weights. So when you think of over in that far left column, all kids that are kindergarten through grade 1 generate 1.0 pupil units. All students that are 7 through 12 generate 1.2. That's why your adjusted pupil units is always more than your ADMs. ADMs are the kids. Pupil units are how much through weighting process. And the most important single line out of that whole page, used in any more calculations than anything else in all these 39 pages, is line 57.
And line 57 refers to all students we serve.
Correct. Including our handicapped kindergarten, including our ECSE kids. And so, again, what we're doing is, remember, we're projecting out for next year's enrollment. Because remember, you're, as a school board, authorizing 2017 payable 2018 levy. So you're setting the levy up for 2018 of what people are going to pay. And if you're setting up the levy for 2018, that actually affects second half of 18, which is fiscal 19. That's why it's 18-19 numbers. Because if you're going to get them in the current year, you have to have that.
Well, and our stakeholders would want to know what they're going to be paid, or what they're going to have to pay for the levy portion versus state aid, especially when we're considering projections for possible change for our district.
Now, page 1 takes the longest of any of the pages. So if you're wondering, my God, we got 38 more pages to go through, it won't get done before midnight. It's not the case. You got a cheat sheet on purpose. Okay, so we're gonna move to the cheat sheets. You got 2 different sets. So there's a 2-page one that says levy aid report, and it's that cumulative one, fiscal year 7 through fiscal year 19. So if you take a look at that one first, and Jen, I'll go through this one because of the history piece, and then I'll let, you can have fun with the cheat sheet, the other one.
That you just finished up today?
That I finished up, yes. Okay, so, the reason I think it's important, the more that we can go back, you know, and take a look at what's happened in the past, it helps us understand what's coming. If you look at all these years, some things that stand out. We know that this is giving you the breakdown of all of the different, you know, the number one thing is basic ed aid. And you can see how that's changed every year, and it changes, it's simply multiply the amount of pupil units we have, multiply that by the existing amount of money we get for that particular year on base aid. And we get $6,312 in fiscal 19. That was back from page 1. So that's at 11 million. Now, a couple things that will stand out on this set of cheat sheets. The student achievement, it's like the 8th one down, all by itself. You notice it started in fiscal 15. Fiscal 18, we're getting 15,000. It's phased out in fiscal 19. We got no money coming in on it. It was all levy, so that's okay. And when you get over to the other sheet, you'll see that I put in, because it was during the fiscal 15 legislative session, it said it would be phased out. Operating cap. Our operating capital is really, I think, real critical, because take a look what's happened over the years on the amount of aid compared to levy. Our amount of money really hasn't changed much, you'll notice. It's about 400,000. But look at what's happened to the breakdown. Fiscal 16, we had 263,000 in aid, 130,000 in levy. 322,000 now in aid, 85 in levy. And that's all based on equalization. It's based on how much the property value equalized. So we're seeing some really good trend there. Equity, we didn't see much of a change in 18 to 19. Referendum, a big one. That has evolved over time. And this is one of them that you're going to get hit on by the populace on the referendum, and why things are now converted from voter approved to non-voter approved. If you look at the history, back in fiscal 9 started the first referendum. This is excess levy referendum. That, everything in fiscal 9, all the way to fiscal 15, up to that point, was all voter approved. What happened was, in 2014 legislative session, it gave the school boards the authority to convert whatever you had and to have board authority up to 724. Now, even though the first 600 was already voter approved, it converted it all to non-voter approved. So it's a little bit, be careful on that, when somebody says, well, God, everything's non-voter approved. Well, the voters had approved up to 600 back in 2013. We did an excess operating levy in 2013. But 2014, they just gave the boards the authority to convert it. So if you get hit up from people saying, well, geez, you guys, everything is now non-voter. Well, it was voter, but it converted. So just so that you know, now referendum includes both the local optional revenue and so the LOR and the referendum. The first $300 is that local optional, and then anything from 300 up to 724 is the referendum. It's all making up the referendum, and that's why we're up to 1.3 million now compared to where we were before that approval happened, where we're at 600 and some thousand. So huge conversion, and much more money coming in, and a lot of state aid that came in. Every other one here is just comparing. Notice the 3-year progression on the long-term facility maintenance money. That's the other big change. Notice deferred maintenance is phased out, and that's been converted over to part of the long-term facility maintenance program. Remember, we said it would be 3 years that it would take to get this to full programming. Fiscal 19 is the first year of full programming. So we went from $190 some per pupil unit to $280 some to $300 and some. So this next year, we're seeing the full, and from this point forward, that's how much will be. Long-term facility maintenance money is both in operations in Fund 1, but it also takes care of the debt service for any alt facility projects. Back in 2009 or 10, whenever it was, the alt facilities of Johnson Controls one, that's what's in the debt service. So the payment of that alt facilities, that's what it's paying off right there, that 80,000 of levy and 120,000 of aid. Okay? That's for that project. That's the payment. And we've got that payment for a few more years. Once that payment's done, all of it will go into the general to give us more money for operations. Okay? That's the cheat sheet. That's the comparison. The second page of it, of that one, simply shows the totals from page 30. And I told you before, page 30 was your big one because that's what shows what you got. 30 of your levy shows that total of, and the breakdown of everything. So 30 and 31 are where I get these totals to break them down for the general fund, what things are RMV, what things are NTC, and so on. That's going to give you the full comparison, and you notice that our levy is going to drop by about $130,000. It's not that we're getting less money, but thanks to the ag credit, more of our money is going to aid from levy. So we're going to see a nice decrease. Homeowners are not going to see a decrease. In fact, most are going to see an increase because the market value went up. Okay? Market value went up. Remember, our total, when you think back to that page 1, and it showed how much we've got in total market values went up. It's that the ag land, we got credit. So any homeowners are going to see an increase in their home values, which means they'll probably see an increase in their school taxes for a homeowner. Because you still have a higher value home, you're going to pay more in taxes. Okay. Cheat sheet. And this is where I think we go right to the cheat sheet, Jenna. And that way we don't have to go through all 30-some pages of this stuff.
I'm down with that. I bet everybody else is too. We're not glossing over yet. All right, so Brian did a lot of work on this. I really appreciate, for me, when I look at the cheat sheet, the piece that helps me, especially when I'm learning about levy, is looking at where it comes from in the right farthest column.
Jana, can I stop you a second? Which
Yeah.
one are you looking at?
I moved on to the second.
The 17?
Yep.
17 through 19.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Thanks for the catch, Sandy. Just saying Mrs. Hawk. All right. So, Brian, I really am going to have you to jump in quite a bit on this because this is something that you were working on, but the piece you had wanted me to point out things that really jumped out at me.
Right.
Okay, so if you recall, I was talking about line 57 a lot, and if you're looking in that far right column, where do we see a lot of reference? Line 57, line 57, line 57, right? So we go back to that first page, and that's our adjusted pupil units. So we're going to constantly see that utilized throughout all of our all of these numbers and calculations. And I think that that's an important piece to remember because we're looking at all the students we serve regardless of their labels within our district. So that's a nice piece. Let's see. Brian, I'm going to have you jump in.
So the second to the right column is that levy sheet and line number. So the information for fiscal 19 is the same from the other cheat sheet. But what I did on this, I wanted you to see a comparison on how much things have gone up each of the last couple of years. So that's where you got those differences in the columns. But that one for the levy sheet and line number, I think that's going to be the biggest help for you, those that are wanting to really get a deep understanding of what's happening here. So if we just walk through one, the basic ed aid, it says page 2, line 102. So if you go to the second page, you go to line 102, and there you got it. There's the total, $11,461,330.60. It's actually off by $1.
Wow, that's really nice that you did that. That is,
See?
have you done this before?
No.
Okay, because I'm like, I have never seen it that.
This is why I said you don't need the markers this time.
Yeah, that's really nice.
So-
And I'll be honest with the school board, I've spoken with several different superintendents. This is unusual to see this kind of layout.
Yeah, well, especially putting this levy sheet and line number on there, because that's just a quick reference.
Right.
So you should be able now to be able to know exactly where, without highlighting or anything else, being able to see exactly how this stuff was generated. In some cases, you need 4 or 5 lines to be able to figure out how it's generated. But what I really like, and I'm going to direct you to another one. You can see that many of these are simply just, you get so many dollars times amount of pupil units, the first couple, okay? But then you get formulas involved in some of these. So one that's a critical one for us and any district looking at a bond. Look at that operating cap, okay? So we're down to about, 10 lines down or so. So it says page 3, line 163. All right, operating cap revenue. So when you look at line 163 on the far right column, 3/4 down, you're in the levy sheets now. You're going to want on these, Lindsay.
Oh, yep.
Okay, so.
Number 3. You
Oh,
said
perfect.
Page 3, what? What
Line 163. So you're going to look at operating cap revenue. Now, it shows you the formula. It says, well, it's line 57. Guess what? There's our good old amount of kids we serve, times 161. Now, line 161, right above it, says, well, the operating cap allowance is $79. Everybody gets that. Plus $109 times the facility age index factor. The older the buildings, the more money it takes to upkeep it, just like your house. Therefore, we get 1.338 because that's our average of our buildings. Anytime you add on to buildings, we're going to be decreasing the ages of those buildings because it takes all the square footage. If you just update deferred maintenance, it doesn't change it. If you add on, it changes it. So these are all things that are factors. So notice, we get $408,000 in total operating cap revenue. Now, that's how we get it. It's based on the ages of the building. The older they are, the more you get. So then we go to the second part of this. How do they break down how much is aid and how much is levy? So now you go to page 6, following that little cheat sheet. And it says, we're going to go to lines 246 through 249. As you can imagine, these are the things you don't work on while you got kids and people in the buildings. It doesn't work well. So on 246 to 249, if you find that on the far left, now you start getting your breakdown. And how do they do it? 246 shows that we take this year's total amount of ANTC divided by the adjusted pupil units. So we take line 30, which was our ANTC. That was that total adjusted net tax capacity. And we divide it by how many kids we serve. So if you know how much value you got and you divide it by the amount of kids, now you got a statewide basis of comparing how property rich is a district. The more property rich, the more it should be levied. The more property poor, the more it's going to be aid. So they simply take all of the school districts in the whole state, put them on a sliding scale, and where you stack up on that gives you your ratio of aid levy. The more property poor, the more aid, because you have less capacity to be able to do it, so that the kids don't suffer. That help? Every one of these where they're equalized with aid and levy, use formulas like this.
Right, this helps balance out us compared to the Twin Cities.
Exactly, exactly. So what I wanted to do is give you something that you would have that we could use, and I'll do this each year, as far as here's exactly where you find it, and here's how we calculate it. Does that help?
That's really, really helpful.
And then line 57 is a live number, so it continuously fluctuates. based
Exactly.
upon if every single school in the state was 35 years old, that number would probably then drop significantly, correct?
Correct.
As more aid.
And-
That's the line 57 is the live document that adjusts everything.
Line, and I go through EDRS, so like last fall, remember when when I gave you that one on enrollment that was showing like a Christmas tree with the reds and the greens, and I said we had no trend data showing this, well, that's critical, because look at how many formulas are based on how many kids we serve. If we drop 40 kids,
Yeah.
look at all these categoricals, how many of them fluctuate. That's a huge impact. And that's why it's so difficult to explain to people that, okay, well, what does one kid do? What does two kids do? Well, look at how many different calculations there are that use line 57. It changes our ratios, 5 or 10 kids do. So every one of these calculations, unless it's just set amount of money, I mean, which are very few. I mean, your basic ed 8 is one of the only ones that doesn't have it. But what I wanted you to be able to have is, now you see which ones are based on a calculation equalized by RMV, and which ones are based on calculations based on NTC. And you can see operating cap is NTC. It's based on all the property value, including all of our ag land. Then get to referendum. It's based on equalization on RMV comparisons statewide. One of the other ones that is a big time change, career tech ed, about 2/3 down the road. You'll see that career tech, it's gone from 30 some, well, total of 57,000 to now we're at 56,000 now on levy, 11,000 of aid. We're actually we just started getting aid on this the last 3 years. If you went back and looked at our, all the way to fiscal 7, that career in tech, up until on the other sheet back in fiscal 14, career in tech only gave us 21,000. Fiscal 15, it only gave us 29,000. Fiscal 16 is where it started kicking in. Why did it start kicking in more money? Because it changed from a 10% guaranteed all the way to 35% of our total cost of salaries in the C&T area. So that's why we're getting a lot more money there. So all those formulas in the history are there between this stuff. So the other one that we'll be seeing a change on, I'll be coming back to the board during this year. Notice, community ed at the bottom of the page. On that far right, it shows you what it's based on. Everything on community ed is still based on the 2010 census. Well, we got to get that updated. Now, I haven't lost sleep worrying about it yet, because I know our community ed will go up, but one of the other factors I know will go down is once those kids become, remember, there's certain things that are still based on your ratios of kids. And so one thing will go up in the general, or down in the general, as one thing goes up in the community ed. So it's one of the reasons you're going to notice when we get to the audit that we actually sometimes take money out of the general fund to help offset costs in Fund 4. That happens a lot because you trade one for the other. You can't move it from 4 to 1, but you can move it from 1 to 4. So, we have to report, and right now it's from the county. We're going to be updating, the county's going to update with the state based on our new boundaries on how much that's going to change our amount of square miles, which our square miles as a district was on page 2 of the levy sheets on line 124. That has not been updated yet. It shows 274.88 square miles. That will be lowered by a couple of miles. Doesn't seem like a lot, but that will be lowered. Our attendance area for sparsity will change. And as that changes, then the ratio of how many kids per square mile will change, because more kids will be resident, so we'll be serving more resident students per square mile.
Now, community ed, though, is only on in-district. We can't count out-of-district kids, right?
Well, notice what it says, population, so take a look at and it's a great question, Raleigh. Notice what it is, how you come up with those totals. We don't get any more money on general community ed. It's just the population that we serve in our district on that far right. And that's why it hasn't changed, because it's still using 2010. Now, it will go up.
When they get the ones that the land exchange. they
Exactly.
will come in
Once the
for.
county reports it, that'll go up. But at the same time that will go up, our square miles of our district will decrease, so our ratios will change.
Will the county just give them what we gained at Woodbridge? Or will they update for whatever's in the district?
They will, they'll only do on the
So what's
areas
the
that
census
exchanged.
count?
It won't be a
Just the areas
census count.
extension.
It'll still be the same information from the 2010 census, just adding the 2010 census of the areas that transferred.
So now looking back on this district since 2010.
Right. Which is, and one thing that Moorhead does, Moorhead actually does and pays for a census count as a city. So that, because of course, they've been growing like crazy. So they want to get that. For us, it's critical once we hit, and you don't have to look at it now, but when you get in that community ed one and you look at the page 12 and the page 13, and you're going to see that there's certain things we do not get yet, and that's page 12. When you look at the community ed, we do not yet get money for population over, so much, so many kids. We have to get over, there's up to us, we're not maximizing things yet. We got a lot more. So line 607 there, it says fiscal year 19 after school revenue, 185, not to exceed population 10,000. So for us, it's a bigger effect having those kids come to us than it is for Moorhead losing them, because they're already over 10,000, and any population over 10,000, they only get 43 cents. Well, when those kids transfer to us, we get $1.85. So those same kids generate more for us than they do for Moorhead on after-school programming, because we're not anywhere close to 10,000. Okay, so there's these little things in these formulas that are kind of interesting. So,
When is the next census?
2020.
Every 10 years.
So, but we got to work with the county on this, but is there anything else that, when you were looking through the sheets, and again, when you come back, as you're looking over this stuff over the next couple of weeks, remember, these things change every single day. So this is a snapshot today's levy sheets. And I mean that because I got done finishing these up today, and at 12:10, I had an email from the person with the levy sheet saying, there's a new one out there. And I'm like, I don't care. I've already printed. So, that's all. Unless Jenna has more that,
I just have a question. I hope it's okay for me to bring it up. I was looking at, based off of the presentation that we had from our kindergarten teachers and their discussions of what's it going to be like on the future and programming and that ready for kindergarten. And I'm looking at population under 5 here on the early childhood piece. I imagine there would be some positive influence there for offering more programming. Am I right or am I wrong? This is something completely new, so I'm just asking the question to you, Superintendent Tygeson and School Board, for your knowledge. I was just thinking about their presentation and what that could do for our district. Thoughts? Maybe I shouldn't go there?
Well, I think we all wish we had another 8,000 square feet in each location, but we don't.
Maybe someday.
Maybe someday.
Maybe someday.
Well, are you talking more of a, not a regular, but more, okay, as these, like what they did in kindergarten, are you talking about maybe doing that more at that kindergarten? So we're not talking like housing kids here, or you're just talking about doing something similar for the younger
I think
kids
that's
too?
open for deliberation. A lot of different ways that, a lot of different.
I didn't know
districts
what you were
around.
asking, I guess.
Oh, no, I'm just looking at this population under 5 and just looking at numbers in general and knowing what we offer here in our district as compared to other school districts and.
Well, we talked about the house across the street, maybe doing something.
The one that's gonna be a parking lot maybe?
Yeah, I hope so.
We offer, well, actually, believe it or not, as a district, we offer quite a bit more for the younger kids, just so everybody's aware. A lot of the schools, for the cost, they do early childhood special education. Like Fargo's policy, they don't do a preschool, or a
They farm it out.
preschool. Yeah, if you want to, you can go to the Y, you can do, go to any of the other programs that are great, but
I just know it's something that's so favored by so many families, and
Yeah.
they just brought it up, so I'm just asking.
And
Educating, enlightening me.
I let's face it, if I had young kids, I would want an expansion of it also, because it's gonna cost me less money.
I like the 2 days. I'm not, my son's in preschool, he does the 2 half days. And what I think it does, for them is, and my wife stays in home, so it doesn't really matter, but it works really good because, they do the pickup, you pay for it and everything, but it's a good opportunity just to get the kids started. It just gets their feet wet, like just walking into a school, and just, it's different from them.
Yeah.
Whether it makes a huge impact or, I'm not a,
I wouldn't have felt comfortable sending my kids all day, every day at 4.
Yeah.
It's
No,
just,
it's too much.
it's too much. They need to be little kids with,
Didn't they prove that kind of too? Isn't that what the data says, like full-time is too much for the preschool kids?
I haven't seen any new data.
Or was that a,
No,
because they were talking,
Yeah.
about
Dayton
it,
was
it wasn't a
talking.
kindergarten teacher that
Dayton
said
was
that.
talking.
Sink or swim?
I mean,
Suck
they're-
it up, Buttercup?
Yeah, I was just, I mean.
Hey,
Something
if Raleigh's telling you, Sandy, that you're a little bit too tough.
Well, no, I will have to back up on the early
Oh,
childhood
sure.
because they are not socially, emotionally ready for a full day program shoved down their throat at 4 years old. They're not.
I think we're really fortunate right now to offer what we do, and we do have a lot of
Yes.
number of families
Yeah.
that take advantage of it. And we offered another section, correct me if I'm wrong, in Glendon now this year?
Right? They're-
The 3-year-olds. So I think that's awesome, and hopefully we can continue to provide that service. And maybe at some point, like Raleigh said,
Yeah.
we have
Well,
room.
It's a hot topic.
It is a hot topic.
So
It
it's fun to
is.
hear your
It's-
opinions and your
Yeah.
feedback as parents.
It's just hard as, for a school board, it's when you know that the funding is not there from the state the same way. So how do you provide the same facilities and infrastructure
Right.
costs associated with something you're not gonna get? I mean, you get pennies on the dollar
Right.
because it doesn't generate the same pupil unit. It doesn't give pupil units.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a bottom line. So it's not economical for school districts to do it unless they go with the funding, and
And then, when they have the great ECFE,
better get a motion.
classes as well.
Let's wrap this up.
All right, I'm looking at 9.5, preliminary tax levy. So I'm looking for a motion
So
to
moved.
approve. Scott, and is there a second?
Second.
By Raleigh. We cannot possibly have any further discussion on this, do we?
No.
Thank you for the thorough
Thank you.
dissection
Yes,
of it.
thank you.
It was
Actually, that was
appreciated.
Very good.
Okay, so
to
all
hear
those in
terms.
favor say
I
aye.
appreciate that.
Aye.
And opposed, note that it's 5, because,
Oh, yeah.
yes. Moving on to 10.1, our next meeting is Monday, October 9th at the High School Media Center. Fiscal personnel is first at 5 o'clock, followed by our board meeting at 6.
In addition of policy on the
And-
16th of October.
Yep. Why does this say 5 o'clock here?
Yeah, I
too?
kinda noticed that.
6
It
o'clock.
says 5.
Okay, it should say 6 PM. Make the change on that, please.
Okay.
And then policy is October 16th at 5:30 to
5:30.
7, and that's at the Glendon Media Center.
And Brian, will you
Give
email
Brooke
out?
The policy one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll
Okay,
email
so is
out
there
the-
anything else? Okay, 7:48, meeting is adjourned.